another episode of People, Place, and Purpose, the show where we hear stories from business owners, creators, and entrepreneurs about how they got started, what they love most, what challenges them, where they've had to pivot, learn, change, how relationships and networking have helped along the way, and ultimately, how they turn their passion into a successful venture and are living a life they love. I'm your host, Kate Lusko. I love to travel, eat delicious food, and meet and get to know cool people, and I'm so glad you're here today. Let's jump in. Joanne Steenberg, the founder of The Love Card, based in Maine, is a self-proclaimed entrepreneuraholic, or as I might call her, a serial entrepreneur. But through all that she has done over the years, she's an educator and a tremendously caring and passionate person with a huge heart. We met by happenstance on an airplane and spent hours on our flight home talking about all that we have in common, being a yoga teacher, a connection to Long Island, New York, teaching students, her elementary and secondary, me, college, the world of social media, mindfulness, travel, and sharing stories of all that we don't have in common. Her latest venture is so powerful, and I can't wait for you to hear the stories about its impact. With that, let's get to today's episode. So good morning, Joanne. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's lovely to see you.
Thanks, Kate. Good morning to you.
So I love the story. Joanne and I met actually not too long ago. We were both on an airplane flying home from the Bahamas in November of 2021 and ended up sitting next to each other. And I think we pretty much talked the whole way home.
Yeah, we did. It was
Lots
great.
in
A lot of
common.
synchronicities right off the bat.
Yeah, it was really nice and we sort of kept discovering new threads of things we had in common. And so it's really neat to sort of have this opportunity to have you come on the podcast. So to start with, I'd love you to talk a little bit about your background, where you're from, what you did along the way, sort of what brought you to where you are today.
How much time do we have? Gosh. Okay. So, I have a degree in education. So I'm a teacher. I was a computer science major first couple of years at college, and then finished up with math, specialty in math education. And I've been an 8th grade math teacher and a 7th grade math teacher and anywhere on down, and then also 9th and 10th grade. And I've had a very varied career, but I've sort of done this dance back and forth between education, which I absolutely love. And my husband and I like to call ourselves entrepreneuraholics because we're always coming up with new ideas and, we don't act on all of them, of course, but so I left education. I had also a marketing beginning because while I was going to school, I was working in a big computer company at the time called Burroughs Corporation, which you don't hear of anymore. But at one point it was IBM and Burroughs. Mm-hmm. And I was a facsimile salesperson. And back then a fax machine was about $15,000 and it cost a lot of money. It was this huge sales process. And so I loved educating people on that industry. And I got headhunted to be a sales trainer. And that's when I really caught the fire to be a teacher. I mean, I've also been teaching swimming lessons when I was younger. So I guess education is at the top. But there was a brief period of time where I was also hired by a company that had bought a fax machine from me to head up a sales promotion division where I would call on sales, big consumer product companies. One of my biggest was General Foods, and help them promote like the Kool-Aid Man. And the company I was representing could have all kinds of premium incentive products made with logos. And that's going way back into the early 80s. But that was sort of my beginning of like marketing and what certain companies did to sort of sell their thing. But then I stayed nice and stable in education for a while. And then I left to start up a boat company. I don't think we got to talk about this on the plane.
No.
In the early 90s, 1990, I started a company called Dragonfly Sailboats and marketed a beautiful trimaran from Denmark. And I thought at the time that I could sell boats in the summer and then still be a teacher. But after a couple of years, I realized there's a whole lot more that goes into selling sailboats. There's boat shows in the fall and in the spring. And so, I mean, I share that because I've really, I've been selling fax machines and sailboats, and then I'm teaching math. So, I mean, I've definitely had a lot of careers. Right now I'm back in the classroom. I'm teaching again. But about 2016, so 6 years ago, I'm sort of going to tell you the story about how the love card started. Is that what's next?
Well, so I'm curious, where are you from? Sort of, I know you're in
Oh,
Maine
yeah.
now, but where did you grow up and what led you to end up in Maine?
So originally from Long Island, New York. And in 2002, my husband and I left Long Island and moved up to Penobscot, Maine, with a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And we've been there ever since.
The way life should be, right?
It is. It
Maine
is.
is
It's
amazing.
wonderful. I have a lot of family and friends still back in New York, and I'm back there all the time visiting. But just to be around all the nature is just perfect.
Yeah, very different from Long Island. Although we talked about that too. I have family on Long Island and spent childhoods going there fairly frequently. So it has a special place in my heart as well. But yes, so talk about sort of, I mean, what started as seemingly sort of a project has really blossomed. So how did this idea for the love card come to be?
So it's kind of interesting because this was not an entrepreneur moment. This was 6 years ago, 2016. I had, I think both of my children were still teenagers. And I had an advent calendar around the holidays with its big wooden calendar, and they could open up doors and have a little candy and stuff. And I pushed it way beyond their age in terms of, mothering to children. But I had two teenagers in the house, and I was trying to come up with some creative ideas. But I was thinking they're going to be going out in the world in a bigger way soon. And I just want them to always know that like their mama loves them. And I made these little handmade cards with a radiating heart on it. And basically, I'll read later what it says, but my thought was they'll keep it in their pocket when they're out in the world. And if they're ever having a really bad day or something, you put their hand in their pocket and be like, oh, that's right. At least my mom loves me. So it just started off with that. And then I printed out maybe 100, I can't remember exactly, with the thought that I would give them to my students at school and put them in holiday cards and send them to family and friends, maybe 200 or something like that. And then what wound up happening is people would get the card and say, oh my gosh, these are so cute. Do you have more? I want to give them away. And so that's literally how the whole thing started, just people wanting to do it themselves. And yeah, so there was no like plan for this one. There was no like, oh, I want to start a business with, these cards.
Well, and I have my card, but I would love for you, before we talk more, would love for you to read what you have written on the back. Is this what you wrote to your kids when you wrote the
Yes.
card originally?
Well, I think there's an extra sentence in here at the end. Yeah, the last sentence, I can't remember. I think maybe the last sentence I added to it, but I should go back into my handwritten one. So
Well,
basically it says,
because
what?
you intended for them to keep it, right? So that would make sense once you
Yeah, I
read what's
wasn't
on
thinking
here.
that they were
Yeah.
going to pay it forward. So I must have had a moment where I added that thinking, oh, I want other people to give it away. But anyway, it says, this is the love card. Ding. You're holding this card because you are loved. It delivers a powerful energy of love and self-love. Hold it tight. Take 3 deep breaths, like really stop and take 3 deep breaths, because just 3 deep breaths can transform you. And feel the love. When given away, you give the gift of love to another. That's it.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And so outside of doing this for your children, there are other parts of your life. I mean, you talked about breath work. Like there are other parts of your life that feed into this passion. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's really, really great question. I mean, I feel like I've been sort of on this path for a long time. I became a certified yoga instructor in 1992. Also teach meditation. I practice meditation myself and yoga. And I feel like I'm just, and I keep feeling like I make these great advances and then come back to kindergarten level, which I think that's what life is, right? But just, trying to be a better human in the world, trying to figure out ways of loving each other and forgiving. And I think I've read just about every self-help book there is on the market. But yeah, it's definitely been a path and a journey. I think my very first book I ever read was Find and Use Your Inner Power by Emmett Fox.
Hmm.
And I think the common thread, I've had a lot of time to think about this now, 6 years in, and I think the common thread is that love is just the most powerful thing, and we can follow all these different paths. There are many, many paths. But we have to find a way to love ourselves and love people that we're having a hard time with. It gets bigger and bigger. I haven't figured it all out yet, believe me, but this is a little interesting piece.
Well, and so along those lines, I mean, this started as a project, right? So friends and family, Christmas cards, but people started asking you for them. And I know we talked about this a little bit on the airplane where you were spending a lot of money to send people these cards for free. Can you talk a little bit about, sort of what transitioned you into, hey, maybe I need to formalize this a bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a longish story, but from the get-go, I wasn't thinking of this as a business. So I just got so excited when people were asking me for them, and then I would get more and more inquiries. So in the very beginning, there was just an email at the bottom. I didn't have a website for it or anything. It was just too small and I wasn't going in that direction. But when it started to hit me, I kind of almost remember the day was when I started getting emails from people I didn't know. For the longest time, it was like, oh, that's the friend of that one, or that's the mother of this one, or that's, we were all connected in some way. And then I started getting emails from people, far away. They weren't just in Maine or New York, which is, my two stomping grounds. And I just started to print out more and more. And really for the first 4.5 years, this is kind of brand new, the formalizing part of it. A good friend of mine, Richard Merrill, loved the love card, and he made a very simple, like 1-page website for it. And it basically told a little bit of the story, which there wasn't much, just this is a way to spread love. And anybody, anywhere, it said on the page, can have free love cards whenever they want. And they would put in their name and address and then click on how many they want. Some people put 5, some people put 500. But most people were around 5, 10, 30, 40, whatever. And it was just very manageable. It was just my way of doing something that I love to do. And I'm trying to think, and again, it just kept growing and growing. I kept ordering more and more. I remember there was a moment where my husband was like, he's from Denmark, so he has a little Danish accent, and be like, honey, how many love cards have you printed out this month? Like just in terms of family finances, it was starting to get a little bit interesting. But still, there was a place on the website that after you ordered the cards would say, if you would like to donate to support this effort, we would appreciate it. And so people were donating, and it wasn't a total wash, but it wasn't super, super financially draining. And then May of 2020, I remembered very well, we were outside and I had my phone and I checked it, basically I would say I would get 200 to 300 orders a year. It wasn't enormous, just a few a month. I'd sit down at my kitchen table, write them out, put them in envelopes and send them off. And May 2020, we were outside and my phone's dinging, dinging, dinging. I was like, wow, honey, I just got 10 love card orders in like the last 5 minutes. And then bing, another 10 and another 10. And it was a very interesting weekend, but in 2 days, I got 1,600 orders. All of them were free. None of them had donations because it got easier to just click and be free. And again, I want that. I didn't want to be like capitalizing on it, but I never thought that maybe someday I would get 1,600 orders. And since it was the beginning of COVID, we were all in that really scared, like can't be around anybody. So I kind of put the word out to my neighbors and said, would any of you be willing to take, a stack of 100 envelopes and, several hundred love cards and pack them and address them for me. So my community was amazing. They stepped in. What wound up happening though, is that it crashed our little website. And it wound up, and I fulfilled every order. Interestingly enough, half of them went to England. And we're not 100% sure. There was some little virally thing, I guess, that happened. We could trace it back to when you order love cards, it says, how did you hear about the love card? And a lot of people kept putting Facebook. And I was like, where on Facebook? Because it wasn't coming back to me that I was tagged or anything. And then some people started writing freebie site. So we think that somewhere along the way, a freebie site, there are these sites where you can go on and it basically advertises things that you can get for free. And so my little love card was front and center. I found one of them on the freebie site, and it was in England. It was in the UK. But they were also going around all over the country. So we think that there was a little bit of a perfect storm, like a couple of places. And then the story gets, more and more interesting. But I mean, basically, from that point on, I was starting to think like, oh boy, this could be, what did I get into? How do I fulfill? I don't know about the fulfillment business, where I line people up, and I started inquiring about fulfillment. Yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then I realized, I mean, there's a longer story. Then that website went down, and it was down for 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And we wound up having a new website designed. And at that point, it said, you still can go on the Love Card website and order cards for free. Otherwise, I do not want to do this. So you write me an email, basically directs you to my email address. And we just did a big one with a hospital in New Hampshire. One of the nurses there wrote me, and she said, the staff at this hospital is working so hard, and every day we're trying to uplift each other. And we just started this thing called the uplifting door that every staff member has to walk through to like start their day at the hospital. And she said, I want to put your love cards all over them, and then I want to give each staff member love cards so they could distribute it out to their patients. And so that was probably about 500 or 600 love cards. And that's not can you donate for that? So there's plenty of those. There's schools, there's hospitals, there's all kinds of neat projects that are doing it that way.
So at what point did you form a nonprofit? At what point did you sort of formalize the business aspect of that?
So that's a really interesting question, Kate. So there's a program in Maine called Top Gun. And right around that same time I enrolled, and it's basically an entrepreneur support program. They have legal advisors come in, marketing experts, and all different things to help an entrepreneur. It's sort of like a mini Shark Tank for Maine. And I loved it because I definitely have a marketing mind, but I was really struggling with what this should be, if it should be a nonprofit, if it should be a for-profit. I mean, it's just a sole proprietorship. And I had experts basically giving me the pros and cons of both. And both of them, I could literally flip a coin and one day be like, you know what, I'm going to be a nonprofit, and then flip a coin the next day. And I really couldn't decide, but I applied for nonprofit for 501c3 status with the state of Maine, and I did not get it. So I'm actually not a nonprofit. And what I think feels right to me right now is one of my other jobs in education. When I came up to Maine, I was the development director of an amazing school. And it's basically a fundraiser. I was a fundraiser for 3 years, and then also helped other startups try and raise funds while I've been in Maine. And I don't want to ask anyone ever again for money. So I totally honor and love what nonprofits are doing, but for me, I'm trying to create a sustainable business that will just support it. Enough people will buy that will allow me to keep giving them away for free. And I think I'm really close to that tipping point. So that's
fascinating. Interesting. Yeah. Well, and I just assumed, right, it sort of fits a lot of the sort of feel good, right? Like it fits the nonprofit model in that way, but that's really interesting. It seems to me that this is really altruistic, right? That as you've said, right, you're not looking to sort of, make millions off of this, but it's more the purpose and the meaning behind it. What are your hopes and dreams? Are there places you can't wait for the card to get you, or people you hope will discover it? What do you hope for this to be?
I mean, I just think I want it to grow. I mean, I am satisfied to the brim on a weekly basis with the emails that I get when somebody orders, and they'll tell me a little bit of their story and how they got it at just the right time. And now there's really like a team of thousands of people that may reorder, may not reorder, or that I just feed love cards to that are, it's so interesting because there's all these different personalities. Some like to take the love card and just leave it with their server in a restaurant and slip away, or slide it to the cashier when you walk out of the grocery store, or, whatever, just like this little anonymous thing, which is more of me. I don't want, it took me 5 years to say, this is Joanne Steenberg, the founder of the Love Card. Like, I just didn't want that to be a part of it. And then there are some that, super outgoing people that will just like hand them to somebody and say, hey, I just want you to know, I want you to have a lot of love today. Or, so I'm sorry, I feel like I just lost track of your question.
Just what your hopes are for this. I mean, I will say I watched the video on your website and you come in for a very brief moment at the end. Like, it was so neat to watch so many other people endorse this movement and talk about what it meant to them and all. And so I'm just curious, if you could sort of say, like, when this grows up, here's what I want it to look like. Do you have those sorts of goals?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know the children's book, a Maine children's book called Miss Rumphius.
Yeah, yes.
So I want to be Miss
About the
Rumphius
lupin.
with the love cards. I mean, I feel like, I'm going to be 60 this year. It's my 60th year. And I feel like, what do I want to leave behind? I never was thinking, oh, I'll leave the love card behind. I wasn't thinking that, but I think I am a loving person, and there's a lot of good, amazing, loving people on the planet. And I think probably one of the biggest things I hope for is that I'm a huge believer that most of us are good, amazing, loving people. And I don't really think the percentage that might be on the news represents who we are as a human race. And so I think that these uplift people and give people hope. And that's huge. And the fact that I could leave the planet tomorrow, and I think this would just keep going. It's not like me driving the bus. It's like all these people are like, wow, this is so cool. I want to give it to everybody I work in the hospital with. It's gone beyond my hopes, to be honest. I don't know where else it could go. I mean, I've had these moments where I think, oh, if a big influencer could find out about it, and if I could be on a podcast, and yeah, I would love it to grow. And then wouldn't it be cool if it got it to a place where I just didn't have, volunteers from my community, which I have quite a few who are like, Joanne, when you need to. I also just opened up an office. It's a working office, with the thought that if I get the 1,600 orders in a weekend, I can have, 6 or 7 of my community members come, and we'll sit on the tables, and you're going to count the cards, and you're going to address the envelopes. And, I'm learning about that part of the business too, but I would love it to employ, Maine people, if enough people are ordering the cards. So
I think it's neat that you're still doing that you're still sort of, you're having them printed and then you're sending them out, as opposed to when people order them, like the Amazon model, right? As a small business, you can list things on Amazon, but I think Amazon sends stuff directly, right? Like, it sort of takes you out of the equation and takes a little bit of that personal aspect. So it's neat that despite, how much this has grown, that you're still sending them from Maine, from you.
I am handwriting the envelopes, which I really love. Everybody gets a little heart, but I'm sure, again, if it goes to 1,600, that we're going to have to go to a little more automation. I'm really excited about the office. It's just a tiny little space in Bucksport, which is an amazing coastal town in Maine. I have a giant love card on the front of the building, and the community's kind of like, what's going on in there? And most of the time I'm in there just fulfilling, but what I really want to do is have a little flag that says open, and hopefully by the summer, because I am teaching, also be more open. And I'm starting to learn a little bit about merchandising. So I have bumper stickers, I have magnets. I have this adorable person who just made me a love card necklace right in Bucksport. I don't have them for sale yet. I don't know how to do that yet, but so again, the idea, which I always wished when I was a development director for the school, like, wouldn't it be great if there was a model? I don't know if I could even say like Newman's Own, because I think that's just maybe a model I'm not really completely understanding, but that you're selling product for the good of a project. And so, like, I have t-shirts now I can show. I brought one with me, I can show you. and little bumper stickers. And I'm starting to get, again, just like the cards, for the longest time, people would order the bumper stickers and say, yeah, Charlie told me about these and I see him driving around, and it was just people who I knew through another person. Now I'm getting bumper sticker orders from people all over the country that I don't know. So even that's starting to, it's got its own life. I can't really take that much credit for it right now, to be honest.
That it's just so magical. And I wonder if at some point there's this thing that runners do. You know how sometimes you see those magnets on people's cars with like 13.1, right? The different mileages that they've run.
Yeah.
There's a thing people do to flip them upside down, and it sort of makes you know that another runner spotted your magnet on your car. And so people flip each other's magnets. And so it makes me think, like, wouldn't it be neat if something like that happened with I know you have stickers, but you also have magnets, right? Which on your website, they're on a refrigerator, but they could in theory go on a car. And it would just be neat if it shows a recognition of like a fellow runner, right? Saw that. It would be just neat if something like that happened
love
eventually. Yeah.
I love that. So it'll be like upside down.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't really know that much about it. I'll have to look into that.
So I'm curious, you talked about Top Gun and you talked about sort of how much you've learned throughout this process. So what are some of the other resources you took advantage of through them or through other things, maybe locally in Maine, and sort of what have been some of those things you've had to learn along the way?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was, I think it was a 8 or 12-week program. The support of everyone in the program was pretty amazing. We all really cheered each other on. I think the hardest part and what I learned the most was having a pitch, because I never wanted to pitch it. So this is a really unique one, because I know how to pitch, I know how to sell a fax machine. I know how to sell a boat. I don't want to sell love. Like, no. So how to package it in a way, like I feel like speaking to you right now is really from all of my exercises with Top Gun, because I would just keep getting these questions, but like, what is it? What is it? And so I think being forced to stand in front of a group of people, and then at the end, you stand in front of a very large audience of people who have potential investors. So the idea is you're pitching to investors. And in my case, I did pitch to investors thinking, like, wouldn't it be great if somebody could put, 20, 50 grand behind this, and I could get my office going, years ago, or order more cards or hire people to help me and do more marketing and do more. But standing in front of people and, articulating what it is, I think was one of the best. The legal aspects of it, I'm still a sole proprietorship. I've learned about all the different forms a business can take, and I may be stepping into an LLC at some point, especially now that I have a little office. But prior to that, sending out love from my kitchen table didn't feel like I needed to formulate that, but I think I'm still learning. And as I said, I think I'm really clear about the nonprofit, at least for now. If it gets to the point where it's really big and exploding, maybe that would be a good path to look into. When I applied for it, I picked my board. And, just having that responsibility of having a board, but those meetings were really fun. And then I've had a lot of opinions like that really vary about branding, or just being this like quiet little thing that maybe takes off someday. And I've gone down that path, except that I have these new things now. So I guess I am starting to step into it. But, back in the Top Gun day, it was still really small. And I'm trying to think what else I learned. There was a lot of people who talk about how to have a staff, how to hire. I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I'm prepared to grow from the Top Gun experience. But for right now, it's very sustainable in terms of my energy and people that are helping me.
And so how about marketing? I know when we were on the plane, we talked a little bit about Instagram and Facebook. And so how has that been? Has that been a new journey for you?
Yeah, I'm learning. I have an Instagram account. I love it. I like telling stories. What I wish I could do better is have more videos and capture more people's sentiments when they get the card. There was a couple of times people said that I should be on Instagram more talking or reading, some of the emails. I try and keep up with some of the stories and comments on the website. I just feel like there's so many more stories to tell, and I'm not quite sure how to get them out there in terms of social media. I have a Twitter account, but I don't know how to use it. And Facebook is, I basically post on Instagram, and then Facebook gets attached to it. But the other thing is I don't know if you've seen, I just finally put it on my website, so it wasn't on when I met you. But this cool filmmaker brought a box full of love cards and his equipment down to Rockefeller Center. Did I send that to you?
You
Okay.
sent it to me. Yeah, it's amazing.
Like, I don't know how to get that out there. It's on Facebook. I can't put it on Instagram. It's too long. So I don't know how to do reels. I don't know how to do all that kind of stuff. And I feel like that's one thing I wish I could do better. And then the other thing is I have emails from everyone that's ever ordered a love card. And their addresses. And I've not been good at staying in touch with everybody. Like, a lot of those people in the beginning, like, oh, I owe them so much because they were the ones out there on the front line, like just doing it. And I want them to know about the video. I want them to know what else is going on. I want to hear their stories. I mean, some of them were on that video, that first video, but there's a lot more. So I want to have more connection with everybody that's been doing this.
Well, and at the end of the day, it comes down to time. And so I'm curious, you still wear a lot of hats, right? You're teaching yoga, you have a family, you're doing the love card, and you now have a physical office. How do you sort of manage switching hats and juggling and all of that?
I mean, honestly, the love card has just been so sustainable right now. My husband helps me. I have community members that help me. I can say this publicly, but I am going to leave teaching at the end of this year to give this more of my time and energy, because I mean, I love teaching. It's so hard. But I mean, I feel like I also imagine the love card supporting initiatives. If this really grows to a place where I imagine it being, I've been teaching an after school workshop for too many years, 30 something years, called Power. And it's self-empowerment for teens. And I go into high schools and we talk about love and self-love and getting out of a funk and, tools and a little bit of meditation, a little bit of nutrition, a little bit of, breath work and role playing. And it's easy. It's not like this super deep, heavy thing. And it's a 2-day or 3-day course. And I've been lucky because some high schools in New York and some high schools around me in Maine keep having me come in. And that lights me up like you can't imagine. So I did have this thought recently, like, wouldn't it be neat if the love card could just support that? Like, the school doesn't have to pay anything, I can just go in and reach kids that way. I think that's actually a new hope. So I'm glad you asked me that.
I like that. Our conversation is responsible for adding to that list.
Absolutely.
It's really exciting. So I just want to jump back because I'm curious. You talked at the very beginning about how, you and your husband have had all these entrepreneurial ideas over the years, but not all of them have acted on. Is there anything you want to share that sort of, you thought about but didn't move forward with for one reason or another?
Yeah, there's always these ideas. So being in Maine, we actually live on a pond, body of fresh water. I'm a swimming teacher and I was a lifeguard in my Long Island life. And so I'm a water bug. I still teach swimming lessons in the summer, here and there, little private lessons on the pond. And I guess, gosh, it's probably 10 years ago, maybe longer. I feel like this is like me talking about a fax machine, but a while back, I discovered the stand-up paddleboard when it was first coming out. And I thought, this is the most brilliant thing. Like, I didn't think we could find other ways of enjoying being on the water. And I was in Long Island in New York, and I went out with my brother-in-law, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And I thought we should start our own SUP distributorship up in the Penobscot where we live, and I would be, of course, the teacher and teach everybody how to paddle. And I'm very safety conscious, so you have to have a life jacket on. And so I made a business plan and had all kinds of exciting ideas. And Oxbow was going to let me represent them. And then I think, things like that happen often, where then you realize, well, there's bigger organizations that are already selling surfboards and giving surfing lessons. Like, this would be a perfect fit. But at the time, there was no one in Maine that was selling SUPs. So I feel like a lot of times I've been on like the beginning thoughts. When I was younger, I grabbed a couple of websites. One was called zenmom.com. I still love it. Somebody else has it, I think, now. And I was imagining it being like a place where moms could go, or caregivers could go, for sort of, a different approach to things, not necessarily Zen, but I just thought zenmom.com sounded really cool. And I came up with a logo, which the logo is a little bit like the love card. It has this sort of radiating heart with crossed legs, because at the time I was just so, and I still am, just so a huge believer in meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm on the planet to demystify it, that it's not this, you don't have to be this woo-woo yogi, anybody can meditate. And it's just, and we're going to have our minds jumping around and thinking all these things. And I just have so many people in my life that were like, I don't know how you do it. I can't sit there and not think of things. It's like, oh no, you do think of things, And at the time, my kids were probably little, and I was thinking, I had like circles where I'd invite other mothers over and we'd meditate. So there's a bunch of those like that.
It's so fun. I'm just in awe of, I've always thought of them as like serial entrepreneurs, right? People who just have that way of thinking about things, that they find these opportunities that, other people haven't seen yet or haven't taken advantage of, whatever it might be.
I feel like most of the time it's because I want to help a bigger part of my community. Like, I was just thinking, there was another thing. There was a fair in Maine, and this group was bringing in these beautiful cloth hammocks. And I don't know, I've just never really had hammocks in my life before. And I laid on this hammock and I'm like, okay, this would create world peace. Like, literally everyone had to like lay in a hammock for 15 minutes a day. I think there would be a lot less anger in the world. So I had an idea about hammocks and selling hammocks and making it, with that idea. So yeah.
I have a hammock. I have like a bungalow. So I have a big front porch, but the front door is off center. So on the shorter side, I have a couple of chairs, but on the longer side, I rigged it up years ago. And I have this beautiful rainbow hammock. I actually bought it when I graduated from grad school. People give you money, right? And so I sort of pooled together the money and bought this amazing hammock. And in the summertime, even though I live in the city, I love to hang out there, read, listen to music, nap, right? It's kind of hard to stay awake sometimes on a hammock, but it's magical. It's amazing.
It forces you to just rest and relax. And we don't do that enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, maybe there's going to be like a love card hammock now. I don't know. Hard
That
on
would
it.
be fun. There are some really neat like camping brands that make some that, are meant to be scrunched down really small and strung between two trees, right? So that they're portable and you take them hiking or camping or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I've got one over there. Exactly like that.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite? I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you have a favorite love card story?
Oh, I do. It's a little bit longish, but I think I can consolidate it a little bit. So this is back maybe 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. My daughter was in her first year of college. She's my baby. So she went off to college, and she went to Denmark. My husband's Danish, so they have dual citizenship. And so she was going off to Denmark for college. I just want to do the same. And she was there, August, September, October, November. And she called saying she was really sick and had like her throat was all swollen and she could hardly breathe. And she was like, oh, Bobby, I can't breathe. And she went to the ER and they gave her some meds. And then she had a doctor calling her at home. And then after like maybe 4 or 5 days of that, it didn't feel like she was getting much better. she called me on FaceTime or whatever, and her head was on the pillow, and she was just like, "Mommy, I can't breathe. It's like I don't know what to do." And I thought, oh my God, I looked at my husband, and it was 2 or 3 days before Thanksgiving. And I said, "We're having Thanksgiving in Denmark. We got to go there." And normally I'm not a worrier like that. But I happened to have this dream the night before that he was carrying her. And I just got panicked, and I said, "We got to go." So he went on cheapesttickets.com and booked us 2 tickets. We drove from Maine down to New York. We had a quick overnight with my parents, and then drove to JFK the next day. And we were online, and we get up to the ticket agent, and she puts our name in. She said, "Joanne, Carson Steenberg, yeah, I see you, but you're not confirmed. I'm sorry, you're not on this flight." And my husband was just like, his eyes were bugging out of his head. And I was just like, okay, what's going on? And she said, "Well, for some reason, you're not confirmed. You have to, call the company that you booked the flights on," which that was a whole thing in itself. We couldn't reach them. I don't even know if they're in business anymore. It was one of those, just couldn't trace it back. And she said, "But here's what you do. Go on the rebooking line." And I could see there was like a line of about 6 people down at the end, and they'll get you on the next flight. But the fact that we weren't even going on that flight was like, wow. So I said, "Let me go. I'm a little more calm in these situations." And he kind of slunk down with our suitcases in the corner, and I got online, and there was a man in front of me. And I found out later, he was from India, and he was so mad, and he was cursing and like kind of really flipping out. "What do you mean? This is how Delta takes care of their customers. I'm supposed to be on a plane, and I did everything right, and I can't believe," like really about to just, whew. And I stood behind him, and I just kind of, because I'm feeling the same way, but I just want to be calm and just get this done the right way. And then the man behind the desk who was helping this line of people, I mentioned that he was also from India because it has a kind of cute twist at the end, but he was also from India, an older man. And he was like, "Sir, you have to calm down. By you doing this, you're slowing the process down. You will be helped after 3 people. You have to stop doing this." And he said, he gave him a red postcard that had a phone number on it. He said, "Here, call this number. They might be able to help you even before you get to me." And then he took the card and he threw it on the floor. He said, "I just came in from India. I don't have an American cell phone. I can't use this number. This is how you help your customers." There's just like, there was one more thing. Mm-hmm. So I tapped him on the shoulder, and I was nervous because I thought he could either just turn around and, he wasn't, I don't think I was worried about physical harm, but he was so upset. And I handed him my cell phone, and I said, "Do you want to use my phone?" And he was like, "No, that's okay." And he turned back around. And then I took another deep breath, and I tapped him on the shoulder again, and I just gave him this. Like, he kind of didn't even look, and I just kind of handed it to him. And I still get emotional every time I tell the story, because I think of how many times we can be in that rage, that's just, oh my God, this is not fair. And I stood behind him, and I watched his shoulders just go like this, like they dropped 4 inches from his ears. Us yogi people, we know how powerful that is. And he turned around, and he's, with teary eyes, and he said, "I am so sorry you got stuck behind the asshole me." I hope I can curse on this, but that's what he said. And I was like, "Oh my God, don't worry. You're not an asshole. I totally understand your frustration." And he was telling me where he was from, India. And I said, "Years ago, I really wanted to go to India, but then I found out I was pregnant, and it probably wasn't a good time. And that's on the top of my bucket list." And it just softened everything. We started talking about India, and we were talking about, and then I learned that this was like the career moment of his life. He was the first time he was traveling to the US. He had to get to Chicago to make a presentation for a company, and he missed that flight, and he just felt like his whole world was falling apart. And then the conversation got a little like, then our peripheral vision went out a little bit, right? And he looked at me, and he goes, "Why are you online?" And so I told him my story, and he's like, "Oh." And he said, "There were 2 people helping this line." He said, "There was that man, and there was a woman next to him. And I gave her such a hard time that I know she's gone. She left. She threw something on the floor and walked out." And he said, "And now she's coming home, and she's going to take it out on her husband and her family." Sorry. And it was just, I mean, whatever that was, it was just like reminding us that, we all have these crappy days, and we're all loved, and we have love in our heart. And so we talked a little bit more, and I pointed I pointed my husband out. It was actually not somebody who would necessarily rage, but he was really flipping out. And I said, that big man over there in a little heap by the suitcases, that's my husband. And when he heard we missed the flight, he couldn't deal. So that's what's going on with us. And then I said, and look at all the people behind us. And so we both sort of had this whole different energy. And now it's finally time for him to get up and finally get served. And he said, I absolutely insist you go before me. And I was like, no, no, no. But I did. I went before him. And I said to him, I said, can you just come up here? I don't know why I was being so brave, but he came up, and the two men shook hands, and they spoke to each other in Indian. And they said, isn't it crazy we've been yelling at each other in our second language when we could be really going at it in our mother tongue. And I gave him a stack of love cards. That's the end of the story. I didn't hear anything more. It's not like I have this whole like, oh, and he spread love all through India, or but it was, for me, one of the hardest things I've ever done, to give it to somebody in a rage like that. And yeah, so that's, I think, my favorite story.
Well, and I love that piece of, the woman who was so upset by him that she brought it home to her family, right? I mean, the opposite is true too. Like, it just takes that one person and that trickle down effect.
Yeah.
All the people then they come in contact with, and, whatever energy they have spreads to them. So it's like, I love that the mission of what you're doing is so big, and yet it's really just one person at a time.
Yeah, it really is. And I have so many of those sweet stories of somebody who got a card who was, in a bad mood or really depressed, or gave cards and saw, like, there was this one, another one I can hardly talk about, but one of the schools that had a shooting, and a local parent knew about the love card and said, can you send 3,000 to the school? This goes back a few years. And I got an email from the principal and said, never have I seen so much joy just wash through the halls. And then there was another high school, didn't go through this trauma, but all of the seniors gave all of the freshmen a love card on their first day of school. And so, like, to be seen by a senior when you're a freshman in high school, like, and to have that kind of like message. So people are getting wicked creative with it, and experiencing that, like how it just sort of uplifts and washes a good vibe.
That's got to be really neat to sort of organically see what's happening to what you started. I mean, I looked at your Instagram, and it's just filled with people and their stories and their journeys, and it's just pretty incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, people are incredible.
Yeah,
people are.
So where do you turn to? I mean, you mentioned that you've read all the self-help books out there, but are there books or resources or people you follow on Instagram, or, sort of where do you look for inspiration or positive energy? What are those resources for you?
There's so many. I love this. There's a brand new book that just came out. Bergman is the author's name, and it's called Humankind. And he's a historian from the Netherlands. And he basically goes back in history, and he sort of flips everything on its side, like how, we sort of been going through life saying, well, that's human nature. It's survival of the fittest. It's aggressive, it's defensive, it's, selfish. We've got to grab what we can grab. And he goes back into history with some great stories to back his belief that humans are actually kind and cooperative and generous and loving. And that's what we're here for. That's what we want to do for each other. And you can go through all the tragedies, in history, and see that how people come together to support and help. But it goes beyond that. He goes into some really interesting stories. So that's my favorite book right now, Humankind. I feel like it just is just another reminder that people want to love each other. And I'm also, like, Wayne Dyer probably was one of the first people that ignited me in terms of just loving yourself, Word, I Am Word is another book. Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
Mm-hmm.
Selig, Selig is another one that is written. I have so many books. I really should have thought about that ahead of time. And I'm trying to think of, I definitely love quotes. That's one of the things I teach in my power class to the kids. I said, you can get a quote at a certain time in your life that can totally turn your life around. And so I would say probably most of the Instagram things that I follow are positive energy quotes, love quotes. The greatest book, oh, how could I forget this, that I'm reading right now, which I thought was right next to me, is an old book by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life. And I read it in my early 20s, and it's all about self-love. And, all of us walk around in our day with negative self-dialogue about ourselves. We look at the mirror and go, oh, I can't believe what it's just happening all the time. And she has this just wonderful formula of turning that around and giving ourselves more positivity. And so that's another, I'm on chapter 5, so I can't talk about it that much, but, almost 60, reading it again, it's like, oh my gosh, of course. And so how powerful it is for self-love to be just as important as giving love.
And how about, from sailboats to fax machines to teaching swimming to teaching yoga to teaching students to the love card. You've done so many things. Someone who's thinking about it, someone who sort of has, maybe it's a side hustle or a hobby or something that they're thinking about starting a business, what advice would you give them?
I would just say, just go for it. And I think one of the things that I learned probably the most is don't shoot so, like, you can think big, but don't jump right into it so big. Things that grow organically that you can manage financially and energetically, I think are the ones that stay the longest. I've been involved in a couple of startups. One in particular that I loved was a frozen teapot company, and it was a squeezy, like the little icy squeezy pops, and it was frozen tea sweetened with honey and maple syrup, and it was really good and organic. And I raised a lot of funds for them, and I loved it. But I think we just got too big too fast and didn't make it. And it wasn't my idea. This brilliant man, Jim Piccarello, came up with the idea. But I feel like I learned, and he probably did too, what happens when you jump into it too big, too fast. And then my husband has been involved in a couple of startups. He and a good friend invented a product and started a company from it, and got some big investors right away, who got more investors and more investors and more investors. And it's still a big company, and it's a great company, but their slice of the pie was less than 1% when it was all done. So there's all kinds of ways of growing something. The latest thing people keep saying to me is, you've got to get on TikTok. And that I don't know, but there's actually a couple of other interesting things. There's a singer songwriter couple from Long Island, New York, who wrote a love card song and wanted to teach it to children. And it's just about giving love. And then there's Michael Franti, who's got some amazing songs about love. Andy Grammer, who I've been trying to reach. If Andy Grammer ever hears this, I've been trying to reach him for like 5 years. He has a song called Give Love that my son told me about 5 years ago. It's exactly what this project's all about. It's like it was written for it. And then of course, the OJs, like, I'm imagining doing something fun on TikTok with, people all over the world, join hands, something. Yeah.
TikTok is lots of fun. I never thought that, I sort of felt like I'm too old for it, or I never thought of myself as a video watcher necessarily, but TikTok is just, I've learned things and I've been exposed to things, and sometimes it's just amazing what people are doing or can do. And it's fascinating, but again, time, right? It takes time to come up with the content and record and do all of those things, but certainly, so I've been pleasantly surprised by the experience with TikTok. So is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share with us?
Not that I can think of. I feel like I've told the story. I mean, there's just so many great stories. The TikTok piece, I would love to develop that. I mean, I guess one other pieces I will share because I'm reading Louise Hay's book is the power of repetition. And, the more you do this, I had an idea 6 years ago, but the more I do it, the more loving I am, the more forgiving I've become. And I think of, all right, I do have one other story. So I was in New York, again, going back 3 years or whatever. And it was a rainy day and I was having my nails manicure done.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an older woman there who was just not nice. She was complaining to the person who was taking care of, oh, I can't believe you did that. You made a mistake and you've got to do that again. I think you should do it all over again. Like, just mean, just basically mean. And I'm, waiting for my nails to dry and I couldn't wait to get out of there. I wanted to put my coat on and get out. And, literally, I remember like tapping my foot, like, oh, can I just go? Can I just go? And I got up and I put my coat on and I put my hands in my pocket. And of course, they land on my wads of love cards. And I was like, Joanne, you're the love card lady. What are you sending that woman right now? I'm sending her judgment. I'm sending her, I don't want to say hate, but it certainly wasn't love because I wanted to get out of her space. And so I put my hand in my pocket and I walked over to her and I handed her a love card and she took it and read it and started to cry. And she said, can I have 3 more? I want to give these to my grandchildren. And I don't know what kind of a day she was having. I don't know why she was crabby to the woman that was taking care of her. But I was judging her and I was feeding off of that and not turning it the direction around. So when we talk about TikTok and repetition, the other thing is that if we've got this negative self-dialogue going, and then I think of TikTok and somehow the algorithm is feeding me the same things over and over again. I can't tell you how many times I see the groom seeing the bride for the first time and crying. And then there's another dance that I keep getting that's to the same song, right? So I'm hearing that song every day. I'm not on TikTok that long, maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I hear that song, and then that song is in the shower, it's in the car, it's on my walk, it's on my workout, and it's because it's being repeated. And so I'm thinking if we could just get that positive thing going and keep repeating it and keep repeating it, okay, I'm going to judge that person over there. He or she is a certain way and a certain type or whatever, and then just go, I don't know that person. I'm just going to, and that's the powerful piece to just, even if you're not extending the card, but you're just extending that thought.
Yeah, that's a great story.
No.
That's a great story. So where can people find you? Website, social media, all of that good stuff.
So website is thelovecard.org. Instagram is the.love.card. Facebook is, I think, just the love card. But all the links are on my website. And if you have a project that, you don't want to pay for cards. So again, the idea that we didn't really sort of finish is that now you can go and you can email me and get as many cards as you want for free, or you can buy certain packages. You can buy 5 cards and or get free 5 cards and just pay, shipping and handling or different quantities. And by purchasing, that helps support what I do. Can I just show you my t-shirt?
Please. Oh, I love it. Oh, yes. That's the one you have a picture with your son wearing that shirt.
Yeah, that's on the website. So. Yeah, and if anybody has ideas, there's all kinds of projects. I mean, the other thing is that there's a really cool store in Maine called Mexicali Blues. They have 5 stores in Maine, and it's really cool vibe clothing and little housewares. And somebody gave somebody who runs one of the stores a love card. They loved it and they contacted me and they just ordered 600 cards. And February 12th, 13th, and 14th, if you go into a Mexicali Blues store, you're going to get a love card. So that's a whole new avenue that I didn't think about. So that's happening too.
That's fun. So fun. Well, this has been amazing. You are just such a gift. I'm so in awe of all that you're doing and grateful to have met you. I think it's,
Yeah.
I love when those sort of things just happen. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks very much.
Such fun having that conversation with Joanne. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Now on to the takeaways from today's episode. Sometimes when we aren't looking is when we find what we are actually looking for. Find time to rest and relax. Many of us don't do that enough. Call them goals, hopes, dreams, whatever you like, but don't be afraid to say them out loud and make them real. A hammock and some meditation could help solve some mighty difficult problems. We never know anyone else's story, and it might take just a very small gesture to uplift them and create change. And finally, as Joanne said, love really is just the most powerful thing. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of People, Place, and Purpose. Please remember to subscribe, rate, review, and leave a comment. As a new podcast, your support really means a lot. And if you know someone who might be inspired by this story, please share it with them. I would also love to engage with you directly, so please find us on Instagram at People, Place, Purpose. I'm so excited for us to continue to learn and grow and discover new things together, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, it's a beautiful day for an adventure. Get out there and explore.